let's start with this picture. I hope many of you recognized it. It's the drawing that Jennifer Claudia made for TUG 2020. It was really sad year, you remember, a lot of disease and death around. We were lonely because of lockdowns, we were scared, and and at this time we made TUG 2020 remote. Now, Jennifer is an artist, and an artist knows how to show the zeitgeist, what's going around with a little detail. And I think that the detail here, which was really beautiful and interesting, is with the rectangles as a background of your drawing. These rectangles actually are made with Peter Flynn's bookshelf package, which was released during the pandemics. And for me, it somehow reflects the reality of pandemics. All these endless Zoom or Teams meetings where we talked remotely. And many of us used Peter's package to create backgrounds. You take electronic books in your library, you create a nice picture of bookshelves, and this is your background. So whenever I look at Jennifer's drawing, I recall this year of 2020. Now, this is my library. It's a little bit smaller than my real library. It's only 5 bookcases, something like 1,500 books. And it means that I have a lot of choices for my backgrounds. And another thing, besides backgrounds, I would like to show you a very interesting game. And honestly, I never played this game during long and boring Zoom meetings. And the game is this. This is part of my library, it's increased. You look at the books there and you try to understand which font is used for them. When you made your guesses, you can check yourself, because another nice feature of Peter's package is you see with the small numbers at the end. Below each book there is a number, and the number is actually the number of the font in the catalog. So I can look and see that my first book is typeset in Avenir LSTD Heavy. The second is a very interesting font, Kyiv Titling Bold, and so on. I see that there is Arsenal here in my fonts, and basically if you have a good collection of fonts, like 20,000, like 15,000 fonts, you can actually play with this game endlessly. Now, how it is done? Let me remind you how Peter's package works. The algorithm is this. You process book by book, and for each book, you make a random rectangle. You have limits, what is the size, but you pick it random. Then you select random foreground and background colors. And the nice thing is that you look at the contrast between them, and if the contrast is too low, you repeat it until you have a nice collection of colors for your backgrounds and foreground. And to forestall question from Simon, yes, it's possible to do it using colorblind schemes. I know how to do it. It's not implemented yet, but it's possible to implement. Now, after you select random colors, you select random font from your collection, and you typeset, and what you get is this. Okay, now, in these several minutes, I made a couple of lies. Some of them are evident, but one of them is more subtle. And the lie is that this is not done with Peter's package, because Peter's package wouldn't be able to typeset this. And the reason is, if you look at the books, you see the books in English, You see the book is in Ukrainian, you see books in Russian, and the thing is that while there are many fonts which have full complement of letters, most of them don't. So if you take random font, more often than not, if you take non-Latin script book, you will not be able to see its title and author. So I said, okay, I have books in English, Ukrainian, Russian, some other languages. So first I tried to use only the fonts which have all of them, but I thought, okay, my collection of such fonts is small enough, I want to use all my fonts. I also wanted to show stylistic variants, swashes. Basically, I wanted everything. And because we work with computers, we know that we want to do it in the most generic, we want to solve our problems in the most generic way. So I said, okay, I don't have books in Malayalam, Tamil, or Telugu, but if I had them, will I be able to typeset the spines on my library? So I said, okay, my question is, I have lots of books in different languages, I have lots of fonts, I want to be able to have a random selection of fonts and books. Of course, you could probably make a list of, for each book you can associate a language of the spine, then look at the scripts of fonts, but it takes a lot of manual work, so I decided to do it in a little bit different way. I decided to use Peter's algorithm he used to select fonts, to select colors, but use it for fonts. So what I do, I take random, for each book I select random font, I try to typeset it, the spine, and if I can, fine. If not, okay, I will take another selection. Here is, I don't suggest you to look into the intricacies of the code, but I just wanted to say that because it's a because it has some logical things, like you want to map everything for each letter, you want to stop early, and so on and so forth, I found out that it's much easier to do in expl-free language rather than traditional LaTeX. So this piece of code is written in expl-free and with all the idiosyncrasies of expl-free. Okay, I did this. And I also did some Biber hacking because Peter's package used Biber, and the problem with Biber is that it gives you, instead of giving you the real list of offers, it gives you some structure, which then BibLaTeX extracts and does it. And I thought, okay, I don't want to do something like this. I want to have the list of offers to be a string, and it took me some time to write Biber code to make a string of the list of offers. BibTeX would be much easier. Okay, I really found the problem. And the problem is that this thing doesn't work. And it doesn't work because Lua TeX or XeTeX have a limitation on the number of fonts. And it's not the number of fonts that you actually use, it's the number of fonts you open. So if I open a font, find out that I cannot typeset my spine and open another font, I already used a slot. And actually not one slot, because I loaded fonts using font spec, and font spec for each font, it somehow tries to load fonts in different weights, and so basically it reserves several slots for each font. So I quickly was out of slots. I think it's the same problem that Frank and Ulrike reported when they typeset the companion. When you have many fonts, you cannot do much. And by the way, the interesting thing about font spec, it does not give you a normal error message, something like you have so many slots, you use them all, good luck. Instead, it gives you a random strange message like I cannot find the file.ftc, or I found e-group whereas there should not be e-group. And basically, I have an impression that the way font spec reports the lack of slots is just taking TeX pool and take a random string from TeX pool. So I wanted still to do it, and I found a solution. And solution is this. I continue opening random fonts until I get maximal amount of them. And by trial and error, I found that it's like 2100. I don't know why 2100 is and how it relates to the number of font slots. And basically, I don't understand how font spec works. So when I opened 2100, at this point, I stop opening files. But what I do when I open, on my first part of my algorithm, when I open a file, I remember it. So on the second part of the algorithm, I again choose random font, but only among those I already opened. So I have a stack of fonts, and on the first part of the algorithm, I add fonts to stack. On the second part, I select random fonts from stack. Okay? And in this way, it's a little bit hackish, but in this way, I protect myself from opening too many of them. Again, I don't want to talk much about code there. The only reason I have shown you this and this is to show you that this is a very unholy mess of expl-free and traditional LaTeX, because I wanted to present Peter's code. I didn't refactor it. I added on top of it some fragments from expl-free, and at some point it works, but I'm not sure why and how it works. It's very complicated, but I hope the idea is simple. Now I had another problem. How did Peter typeset spine? He took a rectangle and he tried several sizes until he found the size which is good for this box. And it's not an easy problem. You can adjust, change one size, because when you change your font size, you change the line breaking, and you need to start from the beginning, right? So it's very difficult. So when Peter tried to typeset spine, he actually used several sizes of the font. Now, what font spec does, when you open when you use font a different size, it uses font slot. And as I said, I don't have many of them. So so I ought to do something else there. And what I did, I typeset, instead of changing the size of the font, I changed the size of my box. So I would change my spine, and then I resize my box to fill the original spine. So it's another hack we used. We use the font at fixed size, but the box at different size, and the last thing, we scaled this box to resize it to the proper way. So it was another way I tried to overcome with problems with Lua TeX and XeTeX. It would be very nice if these engines gave me some way to delete fonts from stack. So I created a spine, I used it, and delete. But as far as I know, there is no way to delete font. You need to use it there. So a little bit of a side listing of all fonts. There are actually two sources of fonts that XeTeX and Lua TeX can use. They can use system fonts, or they can use TeX fonts. And I understand that Peter used system fonts. But I wanted to use my TeX fonts from TeX Live directory, because that's where I have them across my machines. So what I did, I wrote a script which would take all the fonts, OTF and TTF files from my LSR files, basically whatever is in your TeX Live tree. You use OTF info to look what interesting feature they have, and if they have stylistic variants or swashes, somehow I love swashes. You order them, and you have a list of all fonts like this. You can see that you have list of files with their OTF switches, and you randomly select something from this list. So when I say that I have 19,000 fonts, it's actually another slight lie. I have much fewer fonts, but each font I count as many times as many different OTF switches I want to use. So Arsenal here would be counted. Arsenal with historical ligatures would be separately. Arsenal with SMCP would be, and so on. So what do I have now? I have now 1,584 books. I have now something like 19,000 fonts with switches and so on. I am able to typeset it. I don't use all fonts with all my books. As I say that by my method, I can use only 2,100 fonts randomly selected. And that's basically what, let me remind you, that's basically what you see here. This is blowout of part of my collection, and this is how my collection looks. Well, how my collection looked when I wrote this file, because I bought a couple of electronic books since then, and I typeset a couple of books for my one of my hobbies. I typeset poetry from of my friends for my private collection. So my collection is now probably a little bit larger. What I want to do next with all this? First, I want to release the code. Right now, we talked to Peter. My first idea was to send him patches, but then he said that it would be better if I take over. And now I have a different thing, a different problem. I want to preserve as much Peter's ideas as possible. And I, for example, don't want to use system fonts, but if I release it, I want to have this, this option. I want to make a lot of cleaning and refactoring, because right now the code is Peter's code, my code, some patches, some changes, and now it's a veritable mess. And you know that one of the things which prevents people from releasing open source is that they are ashamed. I am ashamed of my patches. But okay. And another thing I want to do for a long time, I'm a little bit pissed by the fact that if you look at the sizes of my rectangles, they are random. But it's not correct, because some of books are thick, some of books are thin, and it would be nice to show it in my library picture. And fortunately, my library management software, Calibre, by the way, it's a very good software and I recommend it. It has a field, it can output a BibTeX file in a BibTeX file size of your, and okay, I understand that different formats have different size. PDF is different from EPUB and so on, but it works for the first at the first blush. So I want to make the size of the book proportional to the size of the file. So I would know which my books are thick and which my books are thin. And I want to clean a lot of the Biber code, because right now Biber is very slow. It takes, on my very fast computer, it takes like 5-10 minutes to run. And maybe I should go to BibTeX or something like this, but I will see what I can do, but probably I will do. So I have some plans with this package. It has absolutely no practical value, but it's fun.
Thank you, Boris. It's fun is a very fundamental motivation, I guess. So,
first, a comment relayed from the YouTube channel by a certain individual who goes by the name of Peter Flynn. He says that CTAN have accepted the change of maintainer. Okay. And he adds, just added, a library catalog would be able to provide the online lookup of publisher details they get the size from. Which actually sort of relates to my question. You mentioned that you would like to have the thickness of your books proportional to the file size. Perhaps it would be better to be proportional to the number of pages, because if you have a lot of graphics, for instance, the file size might not be really representative of the actual thickness of a physical book that you would have.
Maybe, but some formats like have electronic books in, like EPUB, don't have pages. Yeah, okay. Basically, if you have software which gives you the catalog with the file size, I think that that the TeX file should not care what the size means. It's some characteristics of the book.
Ulrich?
Just to make your life a bit more interesting, in some languages the spine goes in the other direction. So here all text goes from bottom to top, but in English books, for example, they go from top to bottom, so perhaps you should have a language-dependent direction.
Okay, there are two traditions. There is an English tradition and German tradition, they are different, and Russian tradition and Ukrainian tradition are from German. So another thing would be to say that if you look at my real library, you would see that for some of my books it goes in one direction, for some in another. And it's possible to reproduce it, but yes, yeah.
Another nice addition might be to, rather than have these dull rectangles, to put background pictures with real covers of books at random. But more seriously, I think you might want to consider to now push your code to Git and then push your cleaning of the code. Then this useless package could become educationally interesting to show people how to re-engineer code and to not stop when it works, but to do cleaning and reorganization. I think it might be useful in some cases to have some examples of this.
Absolutely, absolutely. I have now in my private Git repository, but I will push it to GitHub as a first thing. Absolutely, yes.
Hi, Boris. You mentioned that you use the file size. So I want to make sure that you are not one of the people that has the full file as a hex-coded field in the bib tag. Because if you do, then you deserve to spend your whole rest of life in damnation and the afterlife in damnation for all years to come.
Well, you should talk to the maintainers of Calibre library, because that's exactly what they're doing for their size field.
You mentioned this thing about running out of fonts. I remember something like 25 years ago when I was playing with MetaPost and reading data files. I was also having something like running out of file handles if the file wasn't read to the very end, and then it was closed automatically. And I wrote some very simple macro that just if you open a file and don't use everything, read it to the end so that the file handle gets closed again. I don't know if it's something similar with the fonts or something completely different with the font loading, but yeah, just remember that maybe it's something like just a trick. I don't know.
Thank you. I really would like to use much more fonts in my library, and this is a good idea. I want to explore it.
I doubt that this is going to work, because I mean the problem with the fonts is that for each font TeX stores TFM information, and that's really where the limits come in. So what you can do is you just have a good big machine and you change TeX Live hardwired top number of array entries for this. So you mentioned the companion. There is one font mem size, which is, I think, the one that actually hits you, and we had to extend that. But these days you can do this on the fly, basically by changing the default setup of what is it, text CNF or something, yes. And just put another 0 into that array, and then you have a few thousand more fonts to play with.
I understand that you were not able to do it. I understand that
I was able to do everything.
Yeah, you were able to compile in one run all your examples?
Yes. We have 300, 400 font families in the book by the end of the day, and they are all inside.
It's not much I have. Yeah, I need something like 2100, but like
no, font families.
Font
I mean,
families,
the
yeah.
fonts
I will experiment.
Each of them has a potentially 50 or more fonts.
Okay, I will experiment. Maybe this is the way to do it.
Another idea regarding the number of fonts, you can also try loading the OpenType fonts directly without using FontSpec in between, because FontSpec tries to load like 6 variants, and then you should be at over 10,000 fonts, and that should be enough.
Yeah, I might want to use it instead of FontSpec. I might want to use directly font loading. It's a good idea. Thanks.
Yeah, actually, thanks, Frank, for the idea. I think it could work in Overleaf as well, because we have one problem. Each year we publish a document that's called FontSpec All the Fonts, that has all the fonts in all the scripts that you can use in Overleaf in FontSpec. And the document, if you check it on the gallery, doesn't have a source, because it doesn't have a source. It's a compilation of many small documents exactly for the font issue. So if you can increase the font number, maybe we can do it and finally publish the source code for this crazy document that shows you all the fonts that you can use. So thanks for that.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
We have filled the remaining time for this talk. Thank you, Boris, again. Let's thank him.